Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Andrew, and today I am very excited to bring on Tonia Dudley, who is a local here in Arizona, who I've now know via through communication and I think meeting up at one of the meetups here locally, uh, probably just under 6 months, but she is been in cybersecurity for over a decade plus, is a co-president for the Phoenix WESIS chapter. And Tonia, I'm going to pass it to you for a little bit further introduction.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me today. Yeah, my current role, I'm working in a bank, a local bank that, well, local, but we're on the West Coast, right? We're expanding. And I work in our CISO office. We have our business information security office. So I am part of that team that gets to interact between the business and the cyber team. So I get to use all of the elements of my experience and what I really enjoy doing. So yeah, that's it. And then as you mentioned, co-president of the Women in Cyber, WESIS. We tend to forget with acronyms, right? What is WESIS stand for? So it's Women in Cyber. It is a global organization that I am very happy to be a part of.
Well, Tonia, I'm so glad to have you on the channel today. And I mean, going through your just obviously going through your LinkedIn and talking to you and seeing all the positions you've held, and like being a manager, director, being a board member, chief information security officer. I mean, like you've held so many titles, and it's crazy because we think back into kindergarten, first grade. Your teacher asks the whole class, "Hey, what does everyone want to be when they grow up?" And we say astronauts and doctors and veterinarians, police officers, but not everyone picks cybersecurity or a role that's in tandem or within that umbrella. But obviously it suits you quite well. So can you kind of share your story of what helped you or why you broke into cyber?
Yeah. And if I would have had a teacher ask me that, I would have been totally stressed out because when I was young, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do, right? Um, I was fortunate enough to be able to have somebody at a vocational school say, "Hey, we're hiring in this office job doing accounting." Sure. Okay. So did finance for many years and then really was one of those power users on the computer, right? And so got into IT for many years. And then when Sarbanes-Oxley came out, got into IT compliance, right? That was kind of the dipping in like when had to be held accountable by regulations and regulators and audits that were
Hmm.
happening. So I did that for 5 years, right? And then I was like, okay, and it was a great blend of my finance and accounting background, right? Because Sarbanes-Oxley was, accounting based, and my technology background, and really having be able to marry those two together. Fun fact: I actually worked at Arthur Anderson, which was the whole Enron and why that all why Sarbanes-Oxley even exists.
Oh man.
That right, like yeah, so it was serendipitous. But, after doing that for 5 years, I'm like, "Okay, I'm ready to do something different." And that's when InfoSec, information security, was starting to kinda be a thing in 2008, right? So I'm like, "Huh, let me try that." The organization I was at had a hiring freeze, so no external hiring, we could only hire within. So that was a great opportunity for me to kinda like, "Okay, well, this is a great way for me to learn." So I started off doing, policies and standard, but I'm like, "Okay, this is a
Nice.
great kind of like lateral move because sometimes in your career, just take a step over if you wanna do something new." So I thought, "Okay, this is gonna be a great way for me to figure out what is this InfoSec thing," right? When you're doing policies and standards, really learning about all the things, and it was, kinda still tied to my compliance a little bit. And then about 18 months into that, we had like a major incident that I got pulled into and said, "Hey, go in the back. So and so is gonna like kind of brief you on what's happening. We could use your help back here." So I go back there and he's in the sock, right? And he's like, "Okay, they're coming in here, they're doing this, they're dumping this." And I like literally was sick to my stomach, like, they're stealing from us, right? I really was nauseous over that like thought of, that really is disgusting, right? So but being on that front end, and I actually saw a post from somebody, on LinkedIn either yesterday or today that said, "Everyone should work in DFIR or IR at some point in their career." And I applaud that because there's so much that you learn because then you see, "Oh, no, this is real. They really do come in. They really do that. They really."
Yep.
It was like every day for 10 months getting to listen to that morning briefing of here's what they did last night, here's where they went, here's what data they stole, right? And so really figuring out where, and then having that comment of, yeah, they know our network better than we do.
Guys, they did a great job mapping this out for us. Can we get a copy of this so we have our network map all the way?
Like, yeah. So, and that was on the backs again of me coming out of IT compliance where you like, here's a reason why you have it controls. And there was one person that would say, hey, it doesn't matter if I haven't changed my password in over a year. For some reason, his account got a negative value in it. And so every time the 90-day came up, it just added to that negative why he did. And I'm like, okay. And so every time I was going through that incident, I just kept thinking of, oh, that guy thinks that there's no reason why he needs to change his password, right? So from there, I just kind of, wow, where did I go? And then I went into awareness, right? Because as I was going through this and kind of getting to know cyber, I was like, yeah, that's not how we shouldn't be doing and awareness shouldn't be based on compliance and all that stuff, right? Like it's more about behavior and changing, right? And all that stuff. And so then they're like, well, you said we're doing it wrong, so why don't you come over and do that? And I'm like, oh, I finally got back to a technical role, right? And they had gotten to move into our architecture group. But then I actually found the passion of doing that and being able to speak from, having that business background in the finance side and then the IT, right? So being able to just blend all that together. So really enjoyed that for many years. So, and then because I got very passionate about phishing, right? And so then, so that company that we used then was like, you should come on this side, and really help us. So I did that for 5 years. The last year that I was there, my boss was retiring and I'm like, I don't have a CISO, or I could be the CISO. And they're like, okay. And then I was like, oh, wait, you're really going to give that to me?
Self-vision. So like, if you say it, you have to sometimes speak it for it to happen.
And I had that panic moment of, holy crap. And then I'm like, nope, I've done all of these things, right? So yeah, I got to spend a year doing that and really enjoyed that. So then, yeah. And so now here I am.
So many hats. So many hats. That's so cool.
Yeah. So, so I really have it's a journey, right? And I think if you I'm sure many people that have been on your podcast or been on here nobody has like a straight line, right, on how they got there, right? There's always some other avenue. Even all those years in finance, I moved around every couple of years because I got bored once I mastered it. I'm like, okay, what else is there to do, right? And so that also gave me lots of various experiences, right? Doing accounting and accounts payable and treasury and financial planning, right? So even that.
It's funny, and I think Paige. Paige and I have talked, and Paige and I were talking very much of how GRC and security awareness and that training for a company, like being able to give that awareness to and make it engaging, because it's just like your first line of defense are your end users.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I've seen that many of the organizations I've worked at where it's just like, it's so funny. We'll have all the phishing tests that happen. And then we'll have a user that fails it, and then they send in they'll spam you need to do this remedial training because you failed this phishing link, and that's the one that they replace. I think this is a phishing test. Like, no, you failed the phishing test, and now you have assigned training because you failed the phishing test. That's not the test. Like, oh, you sure need to do this training? I think this is spam. No, that's legit. You failed. So it cracks me up.
Like just the how you were describing that, I'm cringing because for years. Right, phishing simulation is training, right? It's not a test. And that's what I keep trying to tell. We're not doing a pen test. We're actually that is the training. So I've spent many years trying to educate, write papers. It's not a test, it's training. And then don't even get me started on punitive programs, because that's a whole other ball of wax, right?
Yeah, it needs to be encouraged and not like a punishment. It's just I personally think it should be a monthly, hey, we're going to give you a 5 to 10 minute short little thing of hey, a short little fun five question quiz.
Yeah.
And it just needs to be something short, but just to stick in the mind saying, hey, don't forget.
Right.
Rather than this hey, we're doing our quarterly phishing training or yearly phishing training where it's you do it once, you hit the skip button the whole time, you put it on mute, you let it run on the second screen.
Well, I did have an organization where we allowed test out, and we actually became the poster child of how to do compliance training, because I said, okay, my training module, the test is the training, right? If you know all these things, I'm not going to make you sit through it. you're done, right? And then all the other compliance modules were like, oh, if they can do it, and we were regulated, right? So if they can, then we should mimic that, right? And so we were able to kind of help out with, hey, to do it the right way. And then and back to the phishing simulation, if you align it to threats that your organization is actually seeing, not things that are going to piss people off or
Hmm.
that your spam filters are going to block. And then when somebody says, "Hey, that really got me," then you can, it's easy to say, "Well, I'm glad that you learned from it because we actually had this campaign hit us last month, right, or 2 months ago. So that's why we wanted to make sure that you understand what happens when this type of email comes through."
That's a huge part as well. Like I hate seeing phishing trainings that are just their old. I'll call them. I'm 34, but it's like I've been through enough still organizations where it's like I'll see a phishing test. I'm like, this is so old. Like it's not we'll call it like a newer means of how folks are doing phishing. Like
Yep.
real threats are actually sending there's one organization that did it really well.
Yeah.
They would literally send their phishing would be like, hey, so and so sent you a LinkedIn request.
Mhm.
View here to view your LinkedIn request. And it's funny because it's like that's not even them getting into your organization's it's just
Right.
getting into your personal LinkedIn. But
Yeah.
even still with that, they can still gain and get information that would still may be pertinent to them to maybe extort or get into personal accounts and then pivot and kind of get into their home networks and maybe they're a remote from home user. And now they're just kind of sitting on that network at home, just waiting for the right time to like, hey, you know what? We did get that. We did get Andrew's creds from that friend request we sent that was totally malicious that he didn't think anything else of.
Right.
But
Well, and having spent 5 years at that organization and work alongside the threat intelligence team and the researchers that, like, really dug into the threat groups behind that, um, they have APIs to LinkedIn, they have recruiter account, like, they have all of the data at their fingertips
mhm.
with leverage, yeah, dumps that are already existing, right? So, yes, I can tell you for sure that they are doing that.
And then to circle back, Tanya, like you said too, like the mapping of how no one's path is singular, right?
Mhm.
And it's I've told many folks like it's different in the IT world. A lot of my friends that they see me sometimes every 2, 3 years, I'm like, I'm starting to look around for a new position. I'm getting bored.
Mhm.
And they're like, dude, like, where's your loyalty? I'm like, that's not that I'm not loyal. It's just the thing within cyber is once you get into a role, I feel this is
Mhm.
Andrew's opinion. Once you get into a role and you learn the role well, and you can perfect and master the role, you're the person that your boss comes to for ad hoc requests. You're the senior analyst or senior engineer that other coworkers will come to and ask questions to. That's where you know one that you've mastered your trade, and that
Mhm.
okay, you now have two choices. You can sit there and refine that to be like a strong foundational zone SME, or
Mhm.
you pivot to learn the next thing. Okay, well, I've now mastered SOC work. Maybe I want to go into IR. Maybe I want to
Right.
go into cyber threat intelligence.
Right.
Maybe you want to go into leadership. And it's knowing that time, I think, when it's the right time to pivot and just having the confidence to do it. I know some people think like, oh, it's dangerous to hop around. I think it is within reason. But if you're making strategical and smart choices, and it shouldn't be your goal to hop every 6 months. Like that's unhealthy. And
Yeah.
hiring managers are going to see that and say, like, you've stayed at your last 3 places you've stayed at for the last 6 months. We'll explain that why.
Yeah.
And that's I think another strong piece of it too is like explaining, okay, well, why are you looking for this next position? Why are you looking for growth?
Mhm.
But yeah, I just wanted to reiterate to that, like, yeah, I think that's a valid point of like everyone's map of way of how they got to where they are is
Yeah.
completely different.
Well, and if you're a high performer and you don't like to be bored, like who likes to be bored? And li life's journey is all about learning, right, and growing. So, I mean, but there are some people who just don't like change, and that's
Yes.
okay.
Mhm.
That they just want to sit at their desk and do this one thing, right? But then also don't get nose blind, right? Like
Yeah, it's open on the blinders. Yeah.
right, you still gotta like still adventure and network and teach other people what you know, right? Not because 'cause they're after your job. And then also to that point, like, every time I made a career change, it was always in the same org. So,
Mhm.
leverage your, reputation of being a hard worker and all that you know in that org to make that pivot or change within, if you want a career change, right, within that organization because you have people that can vet for you. They're willing to let you learn something new, right? Entry level, manager level, whatever, right? To be able to make that pivot into that next role.
No, definitely. And so speaking of continuous learners, so the role you kind of sit in currently at your current position, like you kind of get to sit in the best of both worlds. You're talking to business level C-suite executives,
Mhm,
leaders, and you're
mhm,
still kind of getting to dive into the cybersecurity piece of things. What would you say is the most, we'll say maybe fun or maybe difficult part when it comes into kind of like you're kind of like a translator, and I think Paige and I also spoke of this, and a
yeah,
few other folks have too, where it's like within any organization sometimes, like even when I was back when I was back at Wells Fargo for my current role,
mhm,
we had that same level of like depending on when certain incidents would happen, we'd have different managers and C-suite levels come into our calls. Not all of them were cyber C-suite folks that knew cyber, but they were part of a team that had to be part of that call for either situational awareness or just for managerial purposes to understand the event of what was going on.
mhm.
But could you mind diving into that? It's like a little bit of like kind of what that role looks like on a day to day.
Yeah. Well, I think because I've only been there almost 6 months now, coming up on my 6th-month anniversary, so for me and I always have to give myself grace. Okay, when you start a new role, you're not gonna know everything at once, right? It takes time for that to
Mhm.
evolve, and so, like, I wanna be able to just walk in and, like, go, right? But part of it is building relationships, so getting to know them, understanding their business, like, what matters to that business line, which could be completely different from a different business line, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're all in commercial banking, but they're going after a different customer profile versus this, group over here, and then we got this digital group, so there's different elements. So first, making connections. Like I actually finally met up with some business leaders 2 weeks ago. I met with him. He's like, "Yep, come to my staff meeting where my staff, my leadership is in there." And then we'll flow it down from there, and then from there, 3 people said, "Hey, come to my staff meeting where my team is there, where you can, talk about the thing," right? And then,
Perfect.
so just kind of evolving it and, letting it happen organically, so when something happens, like today, I'm like, "Oh, Mandiant put out how exactly our threat actors going after Salesforce, they're using this one third-party add-in," right? And so it's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, hey, we have that, like, who's the people that I need to ask? Do we use that? Do we use that module? No, thank goodness, okay," but finding all the right tools, right, to figure out, like, "Hey, do we do this thing?" Right? And then ping the vulnerability person and say, "Hey," like, right, "Is it a business issue?" Like, right, "Is
Yeah.
that system connectivity having that issue? Is it third party?" Like, this thing has been a spider web, right? Like, even for Mandy, like, we keep getting drips of what's actually happening with this latest, right? They would like, "Oh, it's scattered spider and their social engineering," and then, "Oh, wait, it's related to Salesforce." Okay, how exactly? Now today it's like, "Oh, they're using the Drift module," right? So, like, it continues to evolve, right? And staying on top of that. So part of it is spending my day learning to figure out what's happening out in the threats, right? To be able to then say, "Oh, that kind of affects us. What do we, within our security group, like, okay, do we see this? Or are there things that we should be aware of? How are we protecting our Salesforce instance versus, other business applications? How are people logging into how are people calling the help desk, right? What do they need to know? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then working with, the IT leaders on how, what can we do to fix this process? And then just educating. I'm all about telling people the why. So because we're commercial lending, business email compromise is a big deal, right? And
Yes. Yep.
so when I first started uh, doing this in 2015, when we started to see BEC a thing, right? Like, hey, do you have a minute? When I first started seeing this and having my finance and compliance background, I'm like, this is not an email problem. This is a controls problem, right? It's somebody doing something outside of what they're supposed to be doing, right? It's getting that pressure of, hey, I need you to email this or change this bank account, right? So I love to give the why, and so as that was kind of like my spiel that I gave to that, leadership group of, "Okay, here's one of the elements that our customers are impacted by, and we see that, and we help them when we can, when we see it." Um, but giving them the why, I had a really good chart of kind of explaining how it happens and then light bulbs go on for them, right? Because if they can understand why and why it's so important that I respond or let somebody know,
Hmm.
and they are excited to like, "Hey, I saw this thing. We should try like, is this an issue?" And we actually had somebody, send in something to our security monitoring team this morning that they had something happen that was unusual, but it didn't hit any of our alerts. So it's like, "Okay, well, thank you," right? That was great that you did this. And just then being able to use those stories to tell other groups as you meet with them, like, hey, remember when we saw this person get highlighted in the town hall? Like, this is why, and this is what they saw, right? And why it matters.
No, excellent. And you hit a lot of strong points, and it's
Did
the
I answer your question? Because I forgot where we started.
no, you did. That was solid. And I think it's we hit on like continuous learning, like walking through the day to day, which I think you did a great job explaining.
Yeah.
And the continuous learning and like pulling all that kind of threat information that you're pulling from like Mandiant, Rapid7, CrowdStrike. There's so many different places that can provide that kind of threat intelligence. And then honestly, it's just doing that due diligence, like you said, and I also love how you mentioned like getting into a role. Like I've only been with my current place of work also for about 6 months and some change. And it's the same thing. Like you have such a go-getter attitude for those that are high performers. Like you want to be a hard worker. You want to be you want to become the go-to guy or gal. But it's the same thing where it's like my first month or so, I had to kind of take a step back, start learning the environment,
Mhm.
talk to all my folks that had that tribal knowledge of like they've just been here for so long. They understand the processes. They know all the hot links and stuff and the URLs for me to save. Like, hey, save this, put this as a favorite. You'll be in this every single day. I'm like, perfect. Learning how to pivot, learning all the specific tools they use. Cause I'm sure just as you've probably realized as you kind of move around, whether internally or externally,
Mhm.
sometimes tools change.
Yeah.
And there's luckily enough with I think the sectors that we've worked in, like a lot of them have similarities. And so you'll get to a place where it's like, oh yeah, I know several of the tools. So I'm fairly familiar. And that's when I made my hop over to where I'm at now, I knew about several of the tools, but there's two or three. I'm like, man, I haven't gone there enough. I'm gonna have a lot of questions when I actually get to go in and use this to one, better myself, and two, leverage it to actually protect my environment. So, and that kind of ties into, I think, another good question I get from a lot of folks. I'm sure I think we talked before we went live too on this or recording,
Mhm.
is when folks are coming up to you as well saying, "Hey, how do I get into cybersecurity, or what do I need to do to be the best candidate?" What are some advices or some tips or things that you kind of direct people to kind of start kind of like leveling up their skills or kind of getting some experience on their resume?
There's lots of free training out there, right? So exposing yourself to as much as that, going to small little weekend conferences like in Arizona, we have Cactus Con, which is kind of like a B-side, right? Going to those, meeting friends that are, making connections with people that are in those roles. One of the best things that I saw happen was shadowing, right? Like ask your SOC if they will let you shadow for a day, right? Can you just come
Yes.
in and observe, right? Because there's so much that you can like look at that and go, oh yeah, this is fun. Like this looks like a really cool thing to do, socks tend to sit behind the glass or remote, right? And it's like, how do you like get to know the people that are in that little bubble, right? To say, hey, can you tell me what you do? Like just start asking questions or, watch a lot of B-sides will post their talks online, right? On on YouTube, right? Like
Yep.
once they published, it's usually not right away, right? There's usually a gap to just, let things settle or whatever. And watch some of those, right? And just networking and getting to know people. And honestly, that's why I love the WeSys one. The first time I ever went to it, I spoke at it way back in, I'm trying to remember, it was like maybe 2018, 2019 was one of the first ones that I spoke at. And I didn't really know much about it. I saw it like somebody, call for papers, like, so I submitted. I'm like, I don't know. But but I got picked for a lightning talk. So back at that point when it started, it was, you were in the big room, which had like 1,300 people in it, and you had 5 minutes on stage. And I was more nervous about finishing in the 5 minutes because they're like, if you don't finish, we're going to rip you off the stage. Like you have 5 minutes and you have to be done. And the next person has to go because they did them during the meal times. And so there was like a group of people that would go up on that stage to do that. So that was nerve wracking to do that. But that was the first time I ever been to that conference. And what I loved about it is that she reserves half of the tickets are for students. And so I love being able to sit at different tables all the time and just talk to students. And because sometimes they're like engineering students, right? And they don't even know what cyber is. So they go to this thing because they got a scholarship to go, and they're like, yeah, this is kind of cool, but it's not what I want to do, right? But they got exposed to it, right? Or they could go back and tell their friends about it. So I always just love to like meet the students and learn like, why are you here? Or like, is this something that you're interested in? Or people tend to get scared of cyber, thinking you have to be technical. And there's that BRC side of the house, which people
Mhm.
you can understand it. Like I would. I've never really written a bunch of code, but I can walk through it. I can, learn it. I can like do, I can understand it. But that GRC side of the house is really where a lot of the governance and policies and tracking things and kind of getting your toe wet a little bit to like learn about cyber. And so people can be on that side a lot because it takes a certain personality. I've found like I've done compliance, right? But I'm like, that's one area I will not go back to because to me, I'm like, yeah, that's boring, right? But
It's funny.
there are people that love it.
It's so funny because I think like again the third like I had a uh Simply Cyber, Greg Auger,
Yeah,
and Paige obviously, and yourself, and a few others like in a row recently.
yeah,
All that in a sense they're not fully from GRC, but they came from GRC and ran inside and they worked inside GRC.
yeah,
And it's such an undervalued played avenue in where I tell people, I'm like, look, I'm like, when people talk to me about cybersecurity, they think of three roles. They think of IT help desk, they think of pen testers,
yeah,
and they think of SOC security analysts like inside being blue team.
yeah,
And I'm like, there is so much more spider webs of where you can go within cybersecurity. You can go work in sales and do SLED. You can go
like
be part of the procurement team. You can
yeah,
be patching. You can be DLP.
application security. Like there's just so many different elements of it, right?
One,
Identity access management, vulnerability. Like there's so many different pieces of it that have a lot of growth right now, especially vulnerability management, IAM. Those are the two biggest
yes.
ones that I see like huge demands for. Because how are they getting in? Stolen credentials, right? How do you protect the credentials? True up your old fashioned IAM process. I'm just going to leave it at that because I
Yeah.
could go on and on about that.
Yeah. And it's just funny when folks like say, like, oh yeah, I need to try to find my way in, but I can't get in. I'm like, well, what roles are you applying for? I'm only applying for pen tester positions.
Yeah.
I'm like, start. The other thing I will tell people to do is like, look, like people graduate high, like people get through college, they knock out a security plus or a cert or two, they get their degree and they have the mindset like, all right, cool. I'm gonna get my 6-figure job. I'm gonna start Monday and gonna start paying off this debt.
Right.
And then a year goes by and they're like, man, where are the jobs?
Right.
And I try to tell people, I'm like, look, I'm like, be humble. Like,
Yeah.
get your degree, knock out. Always, always, always. I'm doing a whole separate side chat with college juniors and seniors right now in my series of like why they chose cybersecurity and how they got internships.
Yeah.
Find those internships your junior and senior year, or even if you can get one in as a sophomore year, and really double down on those internships and that networking to build that hard work reputation.
Yeah.
Because then when you graduate, you can pivot back to those places you interned at saying, hey, I'm now done with school. Is there a possibility of a full-time position for me? And two, getting into like just an entry-level role. And then, like you said before, like just like going and pivoting from internal and moving your way up.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes like a lot of people skip that step
Yeah.
and they forget to read the fine print. Like, oh, wait, I can do this first and then I can get this really nice, good paying job and make my pivot. And
Yeah.
so it's like,
Be patient in the process, right? Like allow yourself to learn, right? And then there's the thing that we haven't talked about is enterprise practitioner side, and then there's vendor side, right? Consultant, software, like there's really two different realms, and like you keep seeing all the layoffs and everything happening, but it's really on the software side. But when you look at enterprises are still need people to protect their walls, right? So
yep.
um don't like shy away from one side or the other, right? Because there's opportunity on both. And honestly, I feel there's more value in being on the practitioner side, right? Because then you're actually doing the thing that you're trying to sell to or understand, right? So I mean, both sides have their value, right? And
Yeah.
their stuff, but
And
I like being back on this side again.
well, and it's just like you mentioned, like the piece of it is like so many folks, like there's so many new terms that think people are doing. I saw this thing on LinkedIn where it's like the micro retirements where it's like new Gen Zs are working for 3-4 years and they're taking like a year or two off, then going to get another job for 3-5 years. I'm like, it boggles me, but I guess it's a thing. And that's, you know what, good for them if it works. But the caveat, the pivot where I get to though is it's like, some folks need to also realize like, look, like get your foot in the door with an organization to get that experience. That doesn't have to be your forever job.
Right.
Like now, if you love it and you get really well with it and you're well valued and it's a good like work-life balance and the salary and everything matches, then perfect. Stay there as long as you're content. But as we mentioned before, once you start to get those skills and you level up and you start to get bored and you're asking for more work, but maybe there's no more extra work to be had, then
Yeah.
start to look at that pivot. And with having the experience working on the enterprise tools, not a network, you're gonna find your next pivot. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think like you said, like layoffs stink. Like luckily, knock on wood, I've never been able to be part of a layoff. But the caveat is like just make yourself hireable. And I think another thing, a really important thing too, with even the younger generation, when I was over at CactusCon this last year, I did a lot of volunteering inside,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
oh man,
Right.
resume.
Was it the Curve?
Yeah, Career Village, that was it.
So,
And
yeah.
I got to do a bunch of resume reviews and like mock interviews.
Mhm.
And first off, some of these kids coming out of like ASU and these other colleges, their resumes and their projects and things they were doing in GitHub, I'm like, you're doing everything right. Keep
Right?
this up. They'll
Yeah.
be fine.
Yeah.
But the thing that boggled me was some of the communication skills. And so if in a short example is like I asked one student, I'm like, hey, explain a time during a project. And you'll understand this question when I ask it. So I said, hey, explain a time during a project where you didn't get along with one of your employees or coworkers and how
Mhm.
you ended up working with that. And their question was like, well, I'd probably just get the project done and like just not talk to them. And I'm like, that's the same face I made. And I'm like, gotta keep it straight. Gotta keep it straight. Not the answer I wanted,
Right.
but I need, that's what they're going with. And they gave me like, yeah, I'd probably just get the work done and then I'd not talk to them or whatever and just get it done. I'm like, that's a way. Or what we could do is,
Right.
and
Conflict resolution, right? Like,
I'm like, I had to explain another question I asked was like, hey, explain the time you've had a difficulty working a project. And bless this guy's heart. He's like, oh, I've never had a hard time getting projects done. Like I pick up things pretty quick. I'm like, or what you could say, I'm like, what they're trying, and I kind of had to explain the question, right? It's like, hey,
you want to be able to work with you, right? They don't want something that's not going to be when I watched my boys go through high school and college, like everything was project based, right? I'm like, but you know what? That's how the enterprise, that's how the work environment is.
yeah.
That's a benefit that you got to do presentations and work on teams together, right? Like things that I never did when I was
Mhm.
in my school, right? When I was growing up in school, like but like I remember like getting nervous to have to read out, like not even my words, read out loud in of the book, right? Just read like how many paragraphs still gets to me. Okay, right? Like yeah. So yeah, no.
Yeah.
What's funny too is I've seen people say where they've had to hire like companies are hiring people for this generation, right, to learn how to like get along, write email, whatever.
Oh my God. It's so
My
go, go, go,
son
go, go.
ago is like he's been interviewing and he he got a call from a recruiter and he's like, should I call him back? And I'm like, yes. Should I leave a message? Yes. And if you don't hear back from him by 4:30, call him again. He's like, do I leave a message? Yes. Like like it's these simple things that like you like just assume that they know, right? Or that they understand the value of that. So go ahead with
I
your
think, well, I think it was either you and me or Paige were talking about this on how companies are literally hiring folks like how to write how to write a professional email, how to dress professionally for a Zoom call. And it's just like you and I are like what do you mean? Like wear a polo.
right.
Like anyway,
No.
it just that
I've
cracks me
stay
up.
on calls where people are like looking at this screen while their camera's over here, and I'm like, Okay. Camera etiquette 101. You can put like just because you move that video screen underneath your camera doesn't mean they can see your screen, right? I was thinking about that today. I was like, as I was coming home, like, I bet the reason why he didn't want to move his screen is he thought we would be able to see his screen, like, right? That that he keeps it over here and then we see the side face, and I'm like, do you see what you look like when on the panel? One view of all of the speaker, right? All of the attendees. But anyways.
Yeah, no, it's just it's funny and it's just like it's I try I it, but it's a great learning
Mhm.
moment, right? Cuz it's like, hey,
Yeah.
look, like they want to see your root cause analysis and your process like, okay, if you don't understand something, okay, well, hey, if you, I'm like it's funny, I'm like pretend you didn't understand something. Walk me through your process on how you teach yourself. He's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, this is what I would do." I'm like, star
That's
that and
yeah.
that's what you need. That's the story you need to either have fabricated if you're a prodigy and you don't get stumped, bless your heart, you're going to make a company millions of dollars one day.
Right.
But when they ask you that question, that's the story you need to have pinned in the back of your head saying, oh, they're asking me to kind of walk through my problem solving steps on how I solve a solution. Or, oh,
Yeah.
if I didn't get along with somebody, they want to see the steps I would take on resolution, not just bypassing it and just letting it fester by itself in a
Well,
corner.
yes, no question, right?
Yes.
How are you problem solving? And how are you critical thinking, right? Like the things that
Exactly.
this generation is struggling with. But as a parent of a few, I'm like, is it my fault? Did I screw up? Like, what could I have done better?
See, it's the thing I think, because I've sat on a few interviews and it's like, it's wild to me because it's not the technical skills that are lacking.
Right.
It's some of the basic communication skills and just, and to be fair, some folks in IT and cybersecurity are introverted. They like they're recluses. They like to work on their own, but they're rock stars and they get the job done, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I've been given the title of a Tigger personality on some of the places I go to. And it's because I'm a chatty Cathy. I'm an extroverted IT guy.
Right.
And it's funny. I think one of my coworkers at the bank was like, Andy, the thing I love about you is you make me say 3 more words than I want to during the day. The thing I hate about you is you make me say 3 more things than I want to during the day. So, but I think
I was just thinking I think maybe part of that problem is that maybe they didn't have jobs during high school or growing up, right? Like, and now like all of a sudden they have to be in a job where they haven't had to work, right? And so maybe is that the problem, is that they didn't have to have, you know, a remedial job of just like making a few bucks, right? So I don't know. I'm sure we'll be studying it for years.
yeah, like I was like before I got into cyber, I was a lifeguard during high school. I used to be like I took care of horses at families like down the street pasture. I worked as a bus boy,
Right? Like
and yeah, so it's like random odd
it's your
jobs.
life skills and how to like right. And so I don't know, maybe that's for we didn't make our kids work because their job was school and sports, right? So it's like, oh, okay, I guess maybe that's why. I don't know.
Well, Tonya, I got 2 more questions for you, then we can wrap this up. So my second to last question for you is, so when we're not doing cybersecurity, when you're not working on incidents, when you're not putting out fires at work or getting to talk to all your teams, what do you like to do for fun? What do you do to kind of unplug, reset, and kind of take a step back from the screen?
CrossFit. I go to CrossFit 3 nights a week, and
Wow,
oh,
nice.
yeah, it's my. But you know, what's funny is talk about social. Like, so the class time that I go to, um, when I moved to this place where I'm at now, 4:15 was the social. Like all the coaches know, like, oh, 4:15, because there were people that either work remote, people that like, don't work on like right. So it's like we get in and we're all like, oh, chatty, and they're like, okay, listen up, we need to tell you what the workout is first before where you go off and have your little conversations. But and so when I started this job, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to go to my 4:15 class. I'm gonna have to like, but I've figured out how to make it work, so I still get there, right? So
Nice.
but yeah, that's my little unplugged moment.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Tanya, so first off, before I hit you with the last question, I want to say a huge thank you for coming on the channel. And as a thank you, I give everybody, I'm going to give you some awesome ginger hacker swag of your choice. So I'll make sure before we leave this call, I'll send you the link to where you need to go to pick out your item. But yeah, it was a blast having you on the channel. We will definitely have to meet up here because you and I are both local. So we'll definitely have to meet up for a drink or grab dinner one of these days just to talk more. I will not join you for a CrossFit workout. As much as I love CrossFit, it is pretty wrecking on my body and my back. But hey, God bless your heart for still doing it because that is fantastic. But last but not least, the last question I ask everybody before signing off is, what would be a piece of advice or last bit of advice you'd give somebody trying to break into cyber?
I think we really kind of covered it, right? Like, it's networking, lateral movements in your existing organization. Just get out and meet. Like, I know when you were saying that, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's that lock picking thing that happens once a month, right? Like, just like get on LinkedIn and find what little like even meetups, right? Like go on. I don't know if people are still using Meetup, like the Meetup website anymore, if that even still is around, right? But like that's another way to just kind of connect or ask around of like, hey, does anybody have any like happy hours I go to, or like women in cyber, like we once a quarter we're having a happy hour tomorrow night, right? So find those different groups that you can connect with just to kind of make friends and and make a connection so that you can then, open up opportunities, right? Because these days it really is about like, because of the whole like, your resume going into a black hole, right? And
Hmm.
amongst 1,000, right? Getting your name to have that kind of referral or just like get an interview, right? And then it's up to you to sell yourself, right? So
Yes. Yep.
yeah,
Yep, that's the same thing. I keep last thing we'll end before we bounce. Like, yeah, but referrals are awesome. Referrals can sometimes get you through the HR algorithm and get you to a manager.
yep,
But once you're at that manager that maybe a friend or a colleague referred you to, it's your job to be the best candidate
yep,
and to study up, do the research on the company you're trying to go for, uh, prepare and just sell yourself as the best one that, hey, you have this problem. I'm here to fix that problem and
yeah.
I can start Monday. So
Yeah. Right. Right. And it's okay to take a job that maybe it's not the perfect job, but maybe it's going to get you that experience that you know you need in that gap. Right. And then,
yes.
don't like it's not the end of the world, right? If you have to take something less or something that not really super happy about, but it gets you a job for a time, right? It's a season. We all have seasons.
Exactly. Well, Tanya, thank you so much again for coming on the channel. And everyone, thank you so much for sticking around. Please like, comment, subscribe. Drop in the comments what your favorite part was during this amazing episode of Breaking into Cyber. And as always, I'll catch you on the next episode.